Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast, where East meets West. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Motley, and I have a special guest who's considering, hopefully, moving into my area. Emma Seppala, she's a PhD, a doctor that specializes in the art and the science of happiness. Emma, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Chris.
Oh, I'm truly first time just meeting, I just could tell truly the smile in your eyes. And I am not just saying that, when we both have clients or patients, one thing that I've learned hopefully how to do decently is when a patient or a client comes into the office and you can look on their face. And I remember the old adage that it's all written on their face. And you can definitely tell if somebody's happy or sad. There's some mannerisms. And I am really excited about this podcast. And when they told me that you're going to be on here, I was like, I got the Yale lecturer, professor to come on my show. This is great. I'm so thankful. So, Emma, I know that you had a really good convo with Dr. Axe, and he's one of my good buddies, and he's such a good dude. But they may have heard on his podcast, but I want to know more about you too. I like to hear about you and a little bit of your background. Could you let us know why you want to go into happiness and what made you so intrigued with it?
Yes, sure. So I grew up in Paris, France, which sounds, really romantic and awesome. And it is in many ways. But the way that the culture was in the streets of Paris growing up is one of negativity, of criticism, of complaints. That's kind of how you bond with people, by complaining. I know it sounds weird, but it's the way it is. And as a little kid, you grew up thinking nothing's ever going to work out. It's the direct opposite of the US. So when I came here for college and I was like, oh, people are telling you can do anything, and there's not a lot of time here for complaint. People don't really put up with that. And I was like, I like this better. And sometimes you have to step into another culture or another city or another state to really question how you've always been doing things, especially if it feels better to do it differently. So that's when I realized that. But then after a couple of years here, I noticed that people work themselves to the bone and that they identify with I am what I do. And there's so much burnout, and there's so much of a feeling of if I'm not doing something, I'm not valuable. I don't have value. And there's suffering there. And with this sort of overworking mentality also that's there. So after that, I went to China, which relates a little bit to your work, for a couple of years. And I spent 2 years in Shanghai. And I saw people who had absolutely nothing, who lived 4 generations together in a studio apartment with broken windows and no heat in the winter. And they were so resilient and they were so joyful. And I went to Tibet and I saw people who, were oppressed, but it was no one could put their spirit down. They were still prostrating in the mud and the rain and doing their thing. And I thought, wow, you cannot crush the human spirit. The human spirit is sovereign, which is why I wrote my latest book, Sovereign. But this idea that, happiness is in the mind. Here are people who have nothing, but they're grateful for everything. And then I know people here or in France who have everything and are grateful for nothing. And I realized, wow, what is wealth? What is mental health? It's inner wealth. Inner wealth is really what makes you sovereign, what makes you happy, and that's good news because we can't always do it. Something about our environment, what's going on in our society and our world. But what we can have a say over is the state of our own mind, which really connects also back to the work you do and the ancient philosophies of China, of India, Tibet.
It's beautiful how you said the inner working, and you went through and you experienced this, seeing how we live here in America. I totally identify with that. You just work yourself so much and you try to get to a goal and you usually achieve them here in the US, and people are so tired at the very end of the day. They go, well, I worked that hard and I'm not really that happy. And when you saw that, when you came and you started to research that and about gratitude, is there a direct correlation? I know you've mentioned that, but with people listening, is there a huge correlation about how grateful you are to how happy you could be?
Absolutely. In fact, one research study showed that if you write down 3 things you're grateful for every day, it has a bigger impact than an antidepressant.
What?
I like to think about gratitude as a lifeboat. It's a lifeboat because, and research also shows that there's 3 times more positive things that happen every day than negative, especially us. It's oh, well, do we have a bed to sleep in? Yes. Awesome. Do we have food today? yes, we won the lottery. Like, are we feeling relatively safe? Okay, fine. Like, this is already huge and more than what most people are experiencing, you know? So there's so much we can be grateful for, but we forget because we're just so focused on the negative, what's going wrong. And, the news and all that stuff doesn't help because it's like, oh, bad, bad, bad. But I think that idea of sovereignty is like, how do I claim stake over my mental state, over my emotional state? Like, what am I doing to feed myself so I have more of that inner resilience?
Oh, so would you like in the morning, Emma, like in the
Yeah.
morning, you have a choice. I could go on my phone, look at some different things. Are there like habits you do like in the morning to
Yeah.
say I have sovereignty and I'm choosing this because I don't want to be sad. I want to be happy. Is there like
Yeah.
habits?
Yeah. And I don't want to be sucked into anybody else's agenda first thing in the morning, right?
That's
What's your
exactly
phone?
right.
It's other people's agenda, whether it's your friend texting you for something or it's your social media, right? So I definitely do not look at my phone first thing in the morning. It's not on, it's on airplane mode, it's in the bathroom or in the kitchen or somewhere. Um,
Mm.
First thing in the morning I do, well, I get up with my kids, or we get up at 5:30, and I usually do meditation with my oldest son. And then then I do all their school stuff. And then after that, I do a yoga and breathing and meditation practice, which is my way of like cultivating that inner state of calm
Mm.
and peace.
Mm.
And I turn my phone on after that. All right, sometimes I also wait till I got my like frog done. I don't know if you know about the concept of like do your frog first, like that thing on your to-do list. That's like the biggest pain in the neck that you want to procrastinate on. Just do it and then turn your phone on. So
No, it is so funny you mentioned that, Emma. Today I just had a quick meeting before we jumped on the podcast. And one of my friends says she has to get those things done. She says, I have to make this priority point in my head and my list to get it done before I can actually calm down to do the other things, like get on her phone and do her emails,
yeah,
because there's some form of accomplishment that she may feel. And I think people out there are probably like, yes, that's me exactly. Because is there a definite correlation between like, as you get up in the morning and say the stress hormones, like your cortisol a little higher, that it can jump your cortisol too high if you're going to go into that train of like getting onto the worrisome type of information on the net and such?
yes. It's so interesting that you say that. Well, yes, our cortisol does elevate in the morning to kind of wake us up. But what happens if, say, in the 5 minutes it takes to go through your inbox, right? 10 messages, 20 messages, every single one of those emails can evoke a different emotion in you. And in
Ooh.
5 minutes, we're experiencing more emotions than our ancestors experienced in a month. Just looking through our inbox or our social media.
Oh,
You know what I mean? And like, or the
yeah.
news, right? Like, I have friends who are journalists and they're like, we're in the business of stressing people out because otherwise people won't click on our articles and then they won't click on the ads. And we're in a business where we're delivering consumers to advertisements. That's what we're living in. I mean, that's the news, that's social media, everything, right? Delivering consumers to advertisers. How do you do that? Well, evoking the stress response is the best way to get people to click on something. So going back to your morning, like,
Wow.
how are you going to set the tone for the day? Are you going
Mm.
to get your stress hormones elevated right away? Or are you going to decide, no, I'm conditioning my nervous system. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do whatever, pet your cat, like whatever it is, but that you're not automatically jumpstarting yourself with stress. And also, research shows we take in over 60,000 gigabytes of information every day across all our media channels. And this is a conservative number, okay, because it's a couple years old.
Sheesh.
So
60,000 gigabytes.
can you imagine? That's enough to crash a small
I'm
computer.
telling you, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so you got to think like our poor brains, like, and then we're trying to be present with our loved ones. We're trying to focus on our work. We're trying to think clearly. How can you do that? Like, I feel like we live in such an extreme time of,
Yeah.
information overload, which can also lead to emotion overload, that you have to do something equally extreme to balance it, which is why I feel like meditation is a non-negotiable. Because
Yes.
how else are you going to
Yes.
balance this? And it does give you
There's
sovereignty
no
and
way.
awareness. Yeah.
And when you so for the person out there that's telling themselves, yeah, I get up in the morning, I'm already stressed by the time I get up, think about all the list I have to do. I have to go through all my emails, and they're going to say, what is this meditation thing you're talking about? I've heard about it.
Yeah.
Is it a long practice, Emma, or is it like a short practice? Do you
Yeah.
do it for a few minutes, for an hour?
So I I was that person, okay, that was really stressed out. And then I was in New York City during 9/11. So I saw like the second plane crash. And it was just
Oh
after that,
no.
my whole system would like shake at 8:30 a.m. every day before I left my studio apartment. I'd be like shaking. And I tried so many things. I didn't want to go the medication route, but I tried a lot of other things. Nothing helped me until I learned a breathing practice. So for the person who's like meditating is like, I just sit here and just feel more anxious and become so aware that I'm anxious.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. Meditation can seem so hard. And breathing is a really amazing place to start, because it wasn't until I walked into a breathing class called Art of Living where I was like, what is this? Like, why I know how to breathe, you know? But the technique they teach you, it's called sky breath meditation. I just,
Sky breath.
I was able to move on with my life. And like fast forward 10 years later, when I had my PhD in psychology and so forth, I was working with veterans with trauma. And a lot of the offerings for them were not working. And so I was like, well, look, this worked for me. Let me do this. And I ended up doing research on sky breath meditation for veterans, which, by the way, there's a nonprofit that offers this program at no cost to veterans and military family called Project Welcome Home Troops. So
Project Welcome Home Troops. We need to put that in the show notes because that's really great. Okay.
And then Art of Living is the organization that offers it for the regular community. So anyways, but we saw that, within a week, the veterans, many of them didn't qualify as having post-traumatic stress anymore. So I think which is insane. Even as a researcher, we're not used to that. And then a month and a year later, it was still maintained. So it's almost like going through the program sort of recalibrated their nervous system, which is really cool. And we've since run a couple follow-up studies with veterans and compared it to like the gold standard therapy and shown that it's at least as good as that therapy or better, like with regard to the brain and the nervous system. It kind of like it's not reprogramming you, but it's setting you back to a place of normalcy, if that makes sense. So that's why I started with breathing. And I think if whoever's listening, if they've had a bad experience with meditation or it's too anxiety provoking, just start with breathing. And otherwise, meditation. I use an app called Sattva every day. It's Sattva. There are a lot of apps out there, but I really like that one because I like the person Guru Dev, his name is Guru Dev. He leads the meditations and they're really beautiful.
Sattva, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, Christy,
and it's free. It's totally free, which is cool too. You don't have to pay for your monthly whatever. So I use that twice a day. I use it with my kids. Sometimes we meditate together, and then I meditate again before going to bed, because that way when I hit, when you hit the pillow and you're rolling around for 20 minutes with all these thoughts, when I meditate, I'm just like, I meditate for 20 minutes and then I lay down and my mind is clear, so I can sleep better.
Oh, it's like I think it's the great connection for technology in neurology is I'm trying to swipe off all those old apps that have been running all day on my phone so I can get some battery power during the night, right? So I think that now that you've shown us that you can't, like the meditation breath work, because I've heard like breath work is a perfect guiding light into the meditative state. So when you start to get calmed down in the morning and say you've done your frog, you've done your first thing, do you find though, people are going to ask, can that practice start that happiness? And I don't want to butcher this. I always say that's my term, butcher it, because I don't want to I don't know like happiness science like I want to. Yeah. But when you start to get up in the morning, is there, I guess, physical breathing and things that you would say, here's some go-tos that you guys need to sort of cultivate happiness? Maybe that's too much of a general question, but because I know like people come to me all the time and they'll come to you like, Doc, I am not happy. I just can't make myself happy. So what would you suggest with those individuals?
I mean, there's so many different things. So, I mean, the reason why meditation is it increases awareness, and I'll share a story with you around that. And then I can share more tips on other things we know bring greater happiness. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people in some way or shape or form succumb to addiction. Like you don't have to be an alcoholic, but you might be someone who's addicted to work, or maybe you scroll or you watch shows when you're feeling bad. It's often when you're feeling bad. You do something like that because we haven't been taught how to handle our emotions. Like, what did we learn from our parents and society about what to do with our emotions? We're supposed to stuff them down, your negative emotions, right?
Mm.
And that doesn't work out. So then we like shop online, or like my husband, whenever he comes up with a new sweater, I'm like, he went sad sweater shopping. That's what he does. Something warm, I guess. I don't know. But,
sad sweater shopping. SSS. That's great.
I know, right? So when I was in college, I had this thing where I would binge eat whenever I was feeling down, because I was 17 and I was in this new country, and I had never learned how to handle my own unhappiness, right? So I would binge eat whatever there was, and then I would feel awful, and then I would cry. And then this just went on for a while. And I didn't know how to get out of the cycle. So it's like an addiction. You know, I think of it as like an addiction, because addiction often involves a substance to try and make you feel better in the moment when you're feeling bad, right? Drink or whatever. Mm-hmm. So then I'd never meditated before, but then I had a crush on this guy, and he was one of the guys who went to the meditation on campus. Meditation on campuses in 1998 or whatever was a weird thing. Like,
that's exactly. You've been a weirdo. I mean, I hate to say that.
Total weirdo, right? Yeah. So anyway, I was like, all right, the guy goes to think, maybe I'll go meet him there. Okay. So I go to this meditation. Little did I know it was like Korean Zen, super strict, an hour, sit on your cushion, no instruction, don't move, stare at the floor. Okay. So for a 19-year-old, this is really hard and not fun. So I did that for an hour. I thought my legs were going to fall off. I was like, I'm never meditating again in my life. This is horrible. And I left after an hour, right? I didn't meet the guy, but I was like, screw it. Like, I don't care. But I felt more peaceful, you know, afterwards. I'm like, okay, whatever. That was nice, but I'm never doing that again. So anyway, the next day I come back to my room and I'm feeling down, which is often the case then. And there's like a pizza that looks disgusting. And I'm like, oh, great, I can binge. And all of a sudden, this light bulb went off in my head. And it was, hey, you always cry after you binge. Why don't you cry first? Okay, so one session of meditation had increased that level of self-awareness. And I was like, okay, deal. Like, I'll cry and then I'll eat. So I go in my bed and I cry. And when I'm done feeling the emotion, I sit up and I don't want to binge anymore. And I never binged again. I never fell for that addictive pattern again, because the awareness had replaced it. Do you see that?
Oh my goodness. This is so good. Keep going. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. This is why meditation is so key. And research shows that when you meditate, it increases awareness in your mind. Now, on the flip side, like one glass of alcohol decreases awareness in your brain. See, I mean, it's so interesting how our society is built, right? It's like, oh, you feel bad emotions, just go drink. It's just decreasing your awareness more and more, getting you sucked into a habit you don't even want to be in, right? Meditation gives you that sovereignty. It gives you that freedom, because you're like, whoa, like I see something. And once you see something, you can't unsee it. But you gain another level of freedom to act the way you want to act, you know, and that doesn't involve some courage, because like feeling emotions is really hard. I was just thinking today, I was driving and I was thinking, the reason people are doing things that hurt them is because they're so afraid of feeling bad emotions, because it's so hard. It's so hard to feel your anger. It's so hard to feel your fear. It's painful, and we don't want to feel pain. But it's the key. Like the only key to coming on the other side is to be able to feel all the emotions. So one thing that I think American society is really sort of portrays in a fallacy, which is that you're supposed to feel happy all the time. See, that's the first one. But in East Asian cultures like China or India, or even some European cultures like Germany, there's a sense that like unhappiness is part of life. Sorrow, suffering is part of life. In fact, you'll never feel happy if you don't even know what happiness is if you don't know what unhappiness, right? Like you can't actually divorce them. But because I think in our society, there's a sense of like, oh my God, I have to feel happy all the time. There's something wrong with me. We feel like I got to go meditate now. I got to go do this. Something's wrong. It's like, no, can you just be with the feeling? Because if you can be with the feeling like a kid is angry. They're so angry. And then 3 minutes later, they're like, let's go play. Like they're happy, right? What happened? They let the feeling be and they were with it fully. And then it moved through them, because emotion is energy in motion.
That's beautiful.
That's through you. That's a quote by Guru Dev, who's the meditation teacher on the Sattva app. But it's true. It's like it's energy, and like in Chinese medicine and yoga and everything, there's an understanding. Everything is energy, right? So anyway,
Yep.
so that's one thing I think is, first of all, being like, hey, it's okay to feel down sometimes. Like that's part of life. One. And two is, let's not escape the negative feelings. Because what happens if you bottle up a negative feeling? It's right there waiting for you at the end of whatever addictive thing you were doing, only you're more beat up by your drug of choice, whether that's binging or whether that's drinking or whether that's overworking, right?
Yes.
So
yes,
that's where courage, it's like valor. It's like you got to pull up that valor and just be like, I can do this. Like I can feel this stuff. I can feel the pain that I'm feeling, the pain of the world, the pain of whatever's going on. And it's okay. Like I can be a warrior through it. And as I am, you allow it to move, which is really cool. So that's, I think, a preface. And something that's so important to me, because I just feel like our whole society is built around addiction. Everything is like, here, watch this, buy this. My kid was reading like a Garfield comic the other day, and he's like, and the TV was saying, buy this, take it home and stuff it in your mouth. It's like an advertisement, but it's like, that's kind of like how our life is built. And I think that once, and most of the problems that we don't want to face are that. So anyway, that's one thing. But in terms of, so understanding that you won't always feel happy, and that's okay, and being okay with that. The second thing is, so breathing and meditation help condition your nervous system for greater calm and resilience and awareness, like I said. So you have more freedom and you can see more things, like literally become more aware. And that helps you step away from what is hurting you and towards what is helping you. It also helps you become more intuitive. We could talk about the science of intuition next if you're interested.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's really fascinating. But I'll go back to your answering that question you had about what are some other things. Time spent in nature. This is a big one. And there's so many people that have literally nature deprivation disorder, like a lot of kids in urban areas. Yeah. And even just 20 minutes a day in nature, like hanging out with your local tree. And if you don't have a local tree, like a plant in your office or in your room has an impact. And even a poster or like a screensaver has an impact. That's how wired we are to benefit from nature. But I would say time outside, time in the sunlight, and time around green spaces, whatever you can do, however much you can do, is going to benefit you so much. And that's why I always feel like, sometimes if we're stuck with our problems or things going wrong, and you're stuck in like four walls, of course you can't see your way out of it. Your horizon is like this, you know what I mean? Like research has shown that just a 20-minute walk can be so helpful for anxious or depressed feelings. And connecting with nature is really profound. I mean, there's research happening on even molecular exchanges between the natural environment, the trees, and our physiology that we're not even aware of, that happen when we're around natural environments. And in Japan, in Korea, they have this thing called forest bathing, where you just literally...
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's super cool. So that's, and then there's another one that people don't talk about much because again, there's no marketing executives being paid to tell you to go out to nature, but there are lots of marketing executives telling you to drink Coca-Cola to be happier, right? So we got to really become aware. Nature doesn't have marketing executives. The other thing that have marketing executives is the food we eat. Okay, so we are marketed a lot of products that decrease our happiness, like highly processed foods and so forth, decrease your well-being. But research shows that the more fruit and vegetables you eat, the greater your happiness increases. So if you go from eating almost no fruits and vegetables to 9+ servings, you go from the level of happiness of an unemployed person to one that's employed. It's just a huge jump. And again, we're not told this, but this is what the data shows. And so I always want to put these tools into people's hands and be like, hey, like just switch out your chips for apples. People know about that for like their waistline or their heart health, but it's actually for your mental health too. So that's my next tip. You want me to keep going?
No, I think that I want to interject. Like that's a beautiful point, because I know that you studied when you went over to China, but we were always taught that, it's called organ communication, when you talk to your organs and you breathe through your organs. And I think that when like somebody's eating more vegetables, more fruits, to me, it's a way, when I talk to some of my patients, I'm like, it's a way to tell them that you love them. And I don't sound to sound corny, but there truly is a communication between organs. You know, you studied like the mind of the organ, and anytime the organ system may feel deficient or not feel cared for, they start to pull energy from other organs. And then you get this whole imbalance. So you'll say, well, the kidney's tired because, like you said, I'm inside, I can't see out, I don't know what the future is. And that shows in Chinese medicine that really affects the kidney. That's where all your fears and your over anxiety gets in those areas, and that will rob your heart. And so you start to see like these connecting pieces that I love when you're talking about that. The heart starts to feel fatigued. There's no fire in the heart, and there's no joy, and there's no passion. And I'm with you. I wish that now, as they read your books, that people see that organs have a mind of their own, and I would hope that we all would learn how to talk to them and really communicate. And one of the love languages is like what you feed them. So I'm totally with you on that. So when you're going through the practices, one of the things I really loved about with your first book, we talked about overdrive, and you talked about, basically you're going for the future.
Yeah.
Is there a practice that you would say, like, to tell yourself not to look too far into the future, or if people are looking too far and you'd say you need to step back? Because I wanted to ask that question because that's what I do, Emma. I literally will think about 5 steps ahead, and I'm like, I got to go over here and do this. And then when I read your book, I was like, man, I should stop going that far in the future. It's really pushing me. I know I don't want to get us off track, but could you just comment on that about chasing the future?
Yeah, I mean, goals and dreams and ambitions are great. They're great. And like their intentions, for this, what I want for the future, but we have to have the ability to let go. Because if we're constantly holding on to that, it causes so much stress and strain in our system, like you said, tires out our adrenals and our kidneys. We get, and I almost think that most people, our society trains us to have like adrenal fatigue. People are so tired.
We're getting used to it, aren't we? We are a culture that, do you find this? Like, there are times when we can only identify with somebody else by saying, man, I can't make ends meet. I'm just burned out. I wake up tired. And some people, we laugh at it in our culture. And I know people listening are like, yes, I wake up completely tired and unhappy, but it's almost like a way of people communicating with each other, and almost like a badge of honor. Like, I'm so tired and so worn out in American culture that I wore myself out by working too much. And I say that because I have a little bit of a workaholic addiction. It's in my family line. And to me, it's like, can we healthily, like you said, break this meditation, breath work, going through that and going outside? I am 100% on board with that. Do you find that now, like, since you have these modems, are there any types of teachings that would say communication? Hope I put this right. Should there be interaction, like community, or should there be, I want to interact with my friends, I need so much time with friendships, or should I limit them to help with happiness? Because I'm a loner at times.
Yeah. Well, just going back to what you were saying, being stuck in this work addiction, it's bondage. It's bondage. And should you achieve your dreams and share your message? Absolutely. Your message is so important. But how much more powerful will it be when you are not in bondage to it, when you are not slave driving yourself? And that's, like you said, it's become the norm, but people are suffering. And like, when can we hear someone's message at its most powerful? It's when they're in a place of internal abundance, because they've taken care of the vessel in which they live, because they've taken care of their mind, they've taken care of their emotions. Beautiful. And they show up so centered and grounded. And I think we've created a culture of this sort of internal slave driving. And it's abusive. We talk about being in a toxic workplace or a toxic relationship. How many people are in a toxic relationship with themselves?
Whoa. I think probably most people are. Most people are, aren't they? They have to be.
Yes, they are. And in fact, I was just teaching a group this morning, but it's like every single group I ask this question to is the same thing. whenever I ask how many of you are self-critical, 95% of the room raises their hand. And the millennials endorse the idea, I am not good enough, with regard to almost every area of their life, which is so heartbreaking. And when you look at the science, when you're really self-critical, when you beat up on yourself, I'm differentiating from self-awareness, right? Self-awareness is like, oh, I'm not good at my numbers game. I better take some classes or get an assistant, right? But like, if you're self-critical, is like beating yourself up when you make mistakes or you're not good, this feeling I'm not good enough. It shows that it makes you more anxious, depressed. You have more fear of failure. You're less willing to try again. You're less resilient. Your relationships aren't as good, because when you're hard on yourself, you're hard on people you love the most and want to hurt the least. So
wow,
there's another side to this. When you have a more life supportive relationship with yourself, just when you treat yourself like you treat your best friends, which why wouldn't we do that, right? It again, it's social conditioning that has kept us from being as powerful as we could be. So when you have a more kinder relationship, non-toxic relationship with yourself, research shows you have better mental health, better physical health, you sleep better, you have better relationships, you have better decision-making, you're more resilient, you're more creative. Like you basically are at your best self. And whenever whenever I ask that question to audiences and there's one or two people who don't raise their hand because they're not self-critical, inevitably they show up as the most powerful people in the room. Not powerful because of their position or bank account, but because of how they sit there and how they talk. And you're like, whoa, that person has their own back. And for that reason, they can show up like that. They can show up amazing.
I mean, truly, that when you say you have your own back and being able to have less self-criticism, is this a learned condition? The self-critical, or do you think it's genetic, or do you think, of course, it's the culture? Our culture says there could be self-critical, but do you think the origins are mostly your family, or do you think it's just mostly what we see in our eyes, like as we grow? And maybe it's the same. Maybe it's the same thing.
The truth is, I don't know. I think it's everything. It's a community, everything, because 95% of humans are walking around like this. And, we can wonder, when did this start? Did this start when we were under kings and queens and they needed us to feel less powerful? Because it does make you feel less powerful.
Yeah.
But what happens when you flip that, right? When you have that awareness, when you can't unsee what you've seen, when you're like, oh, shoot, like, I'm not playing with this anymore. I'm not playing around. I'm not falling for this anymore. You show up very sovereign. And watch out, world, because when you're sovereign, you cannot be controlled as much. You cannot be succumb to fear as much, because you're not, in the sense, you're not beating yourself up. You're not doubting yourself as much. And, I also always feel like, how are you going to show up on the battlefield of your life? Are you going to show up limping because you kicked your way there? Or are you going to show up in brand spanking new armor because you loved your way there?
I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life, honestly. I'm serious. Really, you give me some good thoughts. I am serious. This is a good combo. When you do show up with like new armor, and I'm not trying to sidetrack, I can tell that whenever you have your own back and you start to communicate with yourself, like as you're meditating and you're starting to get these awareness, like you said, do you need to cry before you binge? That self-awareness, because I can tell you have so much heart I can tell just like how you talk is like there's a lot of fire in the heart. And I think that could be a very good intuitive knowing, an intuition that you have. Do people naturally have intuition and they just suppress it, and they just suppress their intuition, and their intuition is like knocking at the door going, please let me out. Please let me come out and play and do what I need to do. Is that what happens with it?
It's so interesting, right? We've been conditioned for so many things that are not necessarily serving us, right? And this is another area. In school, we learn to be rational, reasonable, logical, and that's a great tool. But we're taught not to listen to our intuition. And, Einstein has a beautiful quote, because he was a big believer in intuition, because that's how he got his innovative insights. He says, intuition is a divine tool, is a divine gift, I think he said, and logic is a faithful servant, or reason is a faithful servant. We have created a society where we worship the servant and have thrown away the gift. We've learned this, just be reasonable, be rational, be this, but we do have an instinct, and research shows we have an instinct. I have a colleague, Joseph Michaels, who studies intuitions, as a gut feeling, like you get a gut feeling, an emotional feeling about, should I approach or avoid, right? Mm-hmm. And he found that when a decision is complex, you're going to make a better decision if you use your gut feeling than if you used your reason. If it's complex, like, if you're just like, oh, my phone's broken, should I buy a new phone then? No, yeah, go buy a new phone. Like, you don't need your intuition, right? But should I move to this new city? I got what about happens with jobs and schools and this and that and whatever. That's complex, right? So, but, I had a friend who was in one of the Twin Towers on 9/11, and he just walked into the building, and the guard said, everyone stay in the building. And his gut said, run. And he ran, and he saved his life by a hair, and how many people didn't listen to their gut, but had the same gut feeling, right? So we really need to understand that intuition is a form of human cognition that we are born with, that we have as an instinct designed to save our life. And it is processing information in a way and at a rate that is much faster. For example, have you ever had a feeling where you feel uncomfortable around someone, you just want to back away, but you can't explain it logically?
Yeah, very much so.
So here's one example of what might be happening. Research shows that if let's say I were angry and I were suppressing the anger, because that's what our society teaches, right? Like, suppress the anger, your heart rate would increase. You would know in your mind, she's angry, but your body's giving you a signal, like a red flag. That's a form of intuition. And we know, for example, like horses, I know you live in Tennessee, lots of horses there, right?
A lot of horses, yeah.
Yeah. So, people will do equine facilitated therapy. Have you heard of that?
Love it. I've heard of it. I've seen some people do it. I've never experienced it, but I've seen it. It's amazing.
It's amazing, right? So the therapist has a horse, and then they work with a patient. Let's say the patient's a kid, and he comes up and he pretends not to be scared of the horse. He's like, I'm not scared, I'm cool. But he's scared. The horse is anxious. It's like moving all over the place. And as soon as the child says, I'm scared, the horse calms down. Why? The horse doesn't understand English. But the horse is a prey animal, and it registers inauthenticity as threat because it doesn't know what, right? Yes. We're the same. So in that sense, like, if I suppress anger, you feel off. You don't know why, but your body's giving you a red flag signal. And so intuition can take many forms. The other form it can take is creativity or innovation, right? It's like, when do you get your best ideas? For example, when you're like, mulling over something, when do you get your best ideas that just pop in your mind?
I normally, for me, I guess when you say you're rested, like when we say creativity, I usually, if I'm doing something creative, personally, like I play guitar some, and whenever I'm picking or strumming at the guitar and mind numbing in a good way, I call it mind numbing. That's when my ideas, I'll be playing the guitar and I go, that's what I need to do in the practice. It's sort of like what can make practice. For me, it's creativity. In the office, I love what I do. So my hands are on people all day, like literally all day. I break away for the podcast, but whenever I am talking to myself, I'll talk to myself with a patient, and I'll be like, well, this point will go to your spleen. Spleen goes to the lymph node. Lymph node's behind your knees, means you don't have the power to move forward. And all of a sudden you go, wait. That point must be correlated to this. And that's when, so there's two things. It's when I'm kind of strumming on my guitar and when I'm doing something I really love to do. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, I love that. Well, first of all, Einstein, he would put himself in that mode by playing Mozart. So he, like you, it was when playing music. So this is what happens when you are, and when you're working with the patient too, you're in such a state of flow and in such a state of service. You're like in that intuitive mode. So what happens is, so when we're highly focused, when you're highly focused, your brain waves are at a high frequency. And when you're about to pass out before sleep, they're really slow. But there's a middle frequency called alpha waves. And you can think of it as a meditative state of mind, or like you said, mind numbing, or when you're in this calm state. Sometimes people say, I get my best ideas in the shower, or, it's during walking the dog, driving. Like when you're not actively focused, but in a relaxed space, that is when we are most creative and innovative. And I couple that with intuition, because innovation and creativity are an idea that just pops into your head. Now, so you might think of it as your brain in active problem solving mode in the background while you're doing something that's not like highly engaging, or you can think of it as receptivity. Elizabeth Gilbert, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love.
Yep.
She wrote a book called Big Magic on Creativity. And she shares this story where she was working on a book idea. It was like a novel in South America about a dam and this whole complicated love story. And then she gave up on that book. She just gave up on the story. And she went to this writer's conference and she met some people. And one of the people she met there, she gave her a hug or whatever. A year later, she meets this person again. And they sit down and have coffee together. And she's talking to this woman, and the woman's like, I'm working on a novel. It's in South America, and there's a dam, and there's this love story. It was like the same story. But Elizabeth had sort of, so she talks about it. This creativity is like, for her, it was like she received it. And then when it didn't land on her fully, it lands on someone else. Like, who knows? Like, there is an element of mystery here that I may be a scientist, but I feel like we need to make room for the mysterious as well, and there are certain innovations and creative insights that come, like to you. You're working on a patient. Your goal is to heal that patient, and suddenly you get a moment of insight. There's an element of mystery to that. And of course, there's your in-depth training as well. Coupled together, that's magic, right? And so, but yeah, so those
that's
are...
amazing. I mean, we got to have you back on again if you would ever do this, because I need to make sure, like, I want to go into like with the mystery of it, because I love the mysteries. Like, that's why I like Chinese medicine. Yes. And some people say it's a little bit mystical about it. I said, no, I would be completely bored if I just robotico in my day. And I need like the mystery. I need something to open up for me to be like, it's like the kid who says, oh, you open the door and there was a new territory with dragons and such. I'm that kid. I'm like, I want to be like in awe. That's what I think life should be in some ways. And I do want us to jump to one section to your new book, because you have a really good way of writing, and I don't want everybody keep us in track here. I'm trying to stay on track because I want to make sure that I don't get you guys confused. But to me, when we talk about your writings, you do it in such a way because you're such a good teacher. I like the way you use like analogies and such. Could you just touch a bit on you say your new book and talk about what that one's about? Has it already been out? Because I've been behind the scenes. I have not been up on my reading like I should have.
Yeah. So my new book is called Sovereign: Reclaim Your Freedom, Energy, and Power in a Time of Distraction, Uncertainty, and Chaos. Oh. And it definitely came to me as an inspiration. I think it was during the pandemic, was this idea of how can we have inner sovereignty so that regardless of what goes on the outside, we can still show up as our best potential, with awareness and courage, and I feel like right now we need everyone to show up in the full potential of the gift that they are for themselves, for their families, for their communities. And we can. And so that's why I try to shed light on a lot of things we were talking about just earlier. Yeah. This idea of how do we cultivate that inner sovereignty? And so that's what it is. And, to go back to one of your questions earlier, you're talking about relationships and you were also talking about ways to increase well-being. There's one thing that I haven't talked about yet, which is really key, is this idea of, have you ever had that where you're kind of having a crummy day or whatever, and then you go to work and then one of your patients really needs help and then you're like fully helping them. And then how do you feel? Like it turns your whole day around, right?
Yes. Yeah, it totally does. It's, it can go good. I mean, I say the term good or bad, but that you can have the worst day ever. And then you have somebody that says, man, that small thing you thought was so insignificant really helped me a ton. And you go, wow, I should receive that, but I learned to neglect it. And
absolutely.
Yeah, that's how I am. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And just helping another person. So that's another trick, another well-being strategy that nobody's marketing to you because no one's going to make any money off of it. But helping other people in any way is truly uplifting. And what research shows, so researchers look at happiness in two ways. There's hedonic happiness, which you can think of as like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, like money, pleasure, fame, reputation, follows on social media, whatever it is that gives you that short dopamine high, chocolate cake, but it lasts like a couple minutes. How long does the joy last? And then you're craving, wanting more. And that's what our society is built on. Okay, buy more, watch more, consume more, do more. But it's like these little bursts of joy that don't last. But then there's another form of happiness called eudaimonic happiness, which is the pleasure you get from helping others, from doing something that's for a greater purpose than yourself. You can think of the first type of happiness is all about me, myself, and I. And the second one is about, it might be connecting to your spirituality. It can be helping others. It can, whatever is beyond the self, right? And that at the level of the brain leads to happiness that lasts. So I always just think like, you don't have to like go feed orphans in Somalia, you know what I mean? But you can set an intention that like, okay, every person I meet, I want to leave them more uplifted than when I found them. Whether it's the cash register person at the grocery store, my kid's teacher, whoever, like, let me help uplift the people around. And what the research shows is that when you uplift others, it uplifts you.
Wow, man. Mic drop on that one. That's exactly. Sometimes I know you've experienced this in the day when patients load is so high and it's just, treating. You get to the end of the day and I know we can all get bone tired, but I will say in my own personal life that it's just like you said, there's a happiness in my heart that I did all I could. Yeah. And that sticks with me. And it can be different for everybody else. But I think that when now in life, as I get older, some people say, why did you pick the job or career you did? I'm like, I have no idea. I think it chose me possibly. I think it's in my blood. I have old Chinese medicine practitioners in my bloodline. But I think that I'm thankful, like you just said, because now, like, at the end of my days, I'll be like, well, probably help somebody with their migraines. And I think I'm doing pretty good. And that's how I feel. And I think everybody out there, when they're trying to find their path, I think that's a huge thing. Because didn't you find this, Emma? Man, we got to do some more interview because time goes by so quick. But I find that people always tell me that when they literally are in their 40s or 50s, they're like, I really want a new career, something where I can help people, something where I can care about them. And I'm like, well, maybe you just didn't realize you were helping people or caring for them in your first career. But I think it's such a huge drive for people to want to help. And I never knew that was one of the ways for happiness.
Oh, I think it's the key. I think it's the greatest key. So if I can summarize the science of happiness in one sentence from 20 years of researching it, it's the happiest people who also live the longest lives because it impacts their health are the people who balance a life characterized by compassion for others with compassion for themselves.
Oh, heavens. That's beautiful.
And that is, one of my favorite studies that connects to what you were sharing too. They looked at these people that had gone through stressful life experiences, like going through war and other really traumatic experiences. Usually those experiences are going to shorten your life because the more stress you've experienced, the shorter your life. But what they found was there was this subgroup of people in this population that just kept living and living. It's like, what's going on here? Like, why are these people living so long? It turns out all of those people in some way were engaged in some form of community service. And it's literally like it erased the fact that they were in the concentration camp or that they went through this experience. So, and if people only knew that, like you want to be happier, you want to help your health, help others, and research shows that they even have lower inflammation at the cellular level when you are engaged in that kind of lifestyle.
Wow. I mean, that's for me to chew on right there. I think I'm going to tell my patients that one. And I say that seriously, like helping others. And it's like that reciprocal chi. I just love the way you put it. You send out the yang but you need to receive it as well. Like you better receive as much love as you give out. You better receive to yourself. Yes. Like when you feel too tired and anxious, you better go take a nap. This is really key. And we need to do a happiness part 2. Doc, if we can at some point, because this is like, I really enjoy our conversations because I think I would really like to even dive deeper into like you just said, intuition, neglecting yourself in the sense like pushing those things aside and how that keeps us from attaining to that point where it's like we can actually hear ourselves if we stop doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Doctor, this has been really good. I know it's like I'm always cautious and aware of time for the guests, but I would love to see you back on here again because I love the Signs of Happiness. Man, thank you. I tell people how they can get a hold of you, how they can learn more about this on the web and on Instagram.
Yeah, sure. On Instagram, I'm at the Happiness Track, and I have a YouTube channel. I think it's Emma Seppala, and I have my book. So I would recommend Sovereign, my latest book, because I really take things really further than the first book and dive deep into all the topics we talked about today. And I really feel like it's like a love letter to humanity right now, based in science and with lots of tools, but just to help us navigate these times and come out on top.
I mean, I'm going to check the Sovereign out. This is good. This has been a good eye opener. I mean, I've got some, the aha moments, and I really mean that, everybody. I got to think about this because I come from a line of like workaholics, and it is very evident in my life, and it's hurt a lot of my relationships in life. And now I will say this before we go, I will say this, the more I've been meditating and praying and doing more things for myself, I think I've experienced a little bit, Emma, about hearing that still small voice where I'm going to do something and it's like, do you really need to do that? Or is that just fulfilling an old pattern in your life? And I used to never have that. And now I'm like, yeah. And now I can hear it. I'm like, yeah, I better not do that.
That's awareness from your meditation practice.
I needed, and I'm getting there more and more. And I'm thankful for it. I mean, there's a lot of things I won't do now. I won't push myself too much. So
that's sovereignty. That is sovereignty.
Oh,
so amazing.
I'm going to get the book. I want everybody else to get the book. And I really mean that. And I want you to please check into Emma's work, check into her Instagram and her website. And Doctor, we're so thankful you came on with us today. And I just want everybody to check you out. This is great.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been so fun.
Oh, this has been fun. Everyone, we're going to have Dr. on again because we want to keep talking about happiness because it is depression and anxiety and PTSD is such a huge thing in our culture today. I take it very seriously with my practice. I see it every single day. And I know many of you guys out there are hurting, but remember me and my dad used to have all these quotes. We try to go back and forth, but I used to always tell my dad, like, remember, sun's always shining above the clouds. It's just how you look at it. And, guys, thank you so much. If you guys like this kind of information, please give us some comments, subscribe, send it to somebody who's been going through some issues with not being happy. And at least we have now good information that's science-backed. So from all of us here at the Ancient Hill Podcast, thank you, Dr. Emma. We really appreciate you being on here today.
Thank you. It's been so fun.
All right, guys, take it easy. Have a good day.